Hello and welcome. A very good afternoon and welcome to a special program on SSBC with me, Paul Bith. Today we are going to talk more about a program that mostly the topic that we have chosen to be discussing today is one of the most important topics that has so far been recently denounced by the U.S. president by saying that the U.S. president has so far terminated all funds that were allocated for the USAID to support the needy countries in Africa and in the rest of the world. As we are just started our program, the United States government, led by President Donald Trump, terminated funds for the United States Agency for International Development, which is USAID, since early February 2025. The USAID has been essentially disbanded, experiencing mass layoffs and forced closure of its headquarters in Washington, D.C. This follows President Donald Trump's executive orders, which halted all foreign assistance payment for 90 days, along with his administration narrative that the agency is plagued with efforts and programs that undermined national interest. Although this idea has continued to spread, the reality is that the USAID is an important agency, both domestically and internationally. As United States foreign assistance funding constitutes a significant percentage of worldwide foreign aid, shutting down this program jeopardizes the health and safety of various countries and communities, but also possessed issues for American citizens who worked alongside these assistance efforts. To discuss this, I'm joined in the studio by Dr. Miyar Denyokt Michar, who is a dynamic and innovative adjunct assistant professor at the University of Juba, specializing in business administration and management. His research portfolio focuses on sustainable development, services, innovations, strategic human resource management, and political fragility in transitional governance, reflecting his commitments to advancing knowledge in these critical areas. Gentlemen, welcome to our discussion.
Thank you very much for having me on SSTV.
To begin with our discussion, Dr. Miyar, the American president has so far taken a decision of shutting down all U.S. funds that used to support needy countries in Africa and the rest of the world, which has left hundreds of thousands of people in the world. You know, they are shocked of such news. These people are so far much affected by the critical decision that has so far been taken by the U.S. president. What more can you tell us about this event?
Yeah, thank you very much. First of all, when you look at the state, United States is a sovereign state that has its own integrity and territorial responsibility toward its own citizens, like any other rest of the world. How humanitarian assistance worked in most of the developed countries is that people look at the need of other countries through what we call bilateral relations or multilateral relations with other countries that are far beyond the needs of what they want. First of all, the United States has three important key areas of its domestic interests with other foreign countries. For example, you look at security and geostrategic interests, economic interests, and humanitarian interests. All these are bundled together to look into ways on how United States had been a global funder in order to advance its own interests in the world. And so far, if Donald Trump has changed his mind based on withholding USAID funding to other countries, this will be a very big shift to all those countries who are the recipients of USAID. For example, statistically, if you look since the cutting of this, 68% of the funding, just in South Sudan, 68% of the funding is actually what South Sudan received from United States of America. and you look at the threats of those who are actually employees, like 55% of the people are to be laid off. And in real sense, the cut-off is going to affect about 3 or 4 areas. And number 1 being the health, number 2 being food assistance, and number 3 education and watch. All these areas always receive significant funding from USAID.
We are coming to that. Actually, you know, this kind of this kind of decision that the U.S. president so far took, initiative of terminating all the funds that were allocated to the USAID that were meant to support the people who are having difficulties, maybe those who are sick, and even some other developmental programs like education and so many other things. This kind of decision has left the whole world shocked, and now that mass population is already being affected by tough and dangerous decision. What do you think the health and safety will be in the next few years or in the next few months if this termination continues?
Okay, one of the things that I know so far, nobody who has the right to blame United States because the funding comes from them.
Yes.
What the world should do, or the recipients of USAID should do, is to appeal to United States to at least lift up the assistance or humanitarian assistance that he had been actually granting to other countries like South Sudan and other rest of the world. Indeed, it is a quite shock that it has caught many of the countries aware about what is going to happen, and people do not know the strategic directions of what they are going to do. And so people have either to appeal in order for US to look into the ways in which it will actually release back the fund in order to assist those who are in need on the humanitarian grounds. But I think also some of the countries that are affected should also look at the domestics and their foreign policies toward US. What is it that United States want from their own countries? Like I say, those 3 pillars are the interest. And you know how AIDS worked in most of the countries. Aid has what we call a string attached. You don't give for free. You give for a return. For example, if United States has been a big funding to South Sudan, what is it that United States is gaining? Is it gaining your strategic interests? Is it gaining economic interests? Is it humanitarian interests? When we talk of humanitarian interests, they are advancing what we call a democratic development, developing institution, and good governance is one of the pillars that they want to see when they give. They will say, we give you aids, but you have to be accountable, good governance, and establish institutions that are accountable to its citizens.
You said something very interesting here, of which I would want you to clarify more about what you recently said. You said U.S. Whenever a certain country, for example, we're not focusing actually, we should not be of that way. A certain country is providing aids to another country. Actually, there must be. You say that there must be an interest of which such aids are given to you for that little interest that that country may be interested in. Actually, do you think the reason to is why President Trump's administration took this initiative of shutting down or terminating all the contracts to the USAID? Do you think the issue could have been the issue of the interest or the gain that they were expecting from the countries that they have been providing with their aids?
I would say not absolutely, but partially. First of all, President Trump is looking into what we call American protectionism, buy American, sell American, that it is the interest of the United States citizen that rebel first before the interests of the other states that are actually being to be supported. And so for him is looking on inward domestically, then looking at it in different directions by which its bilateral relations and foreign policy said AIDS is one of its pillars that they support the countries where they have an interest and also on the ground of humanitarian assistance.
For example, a lot of, a lot more other Americans people are not, they are not happy actually with what the president has done by terminating all the aids that were meant for different countries. Even the U.S. Supreme Court, have been telling Trump, to hold to withhold what the decision that he has so far taken. With this kind of situation now, it seemed like it is the president himself with some few little people that are around him that have so far taken this bold decision by terminating this contract, whereas several other Americans are not happy with that initiative of terminating the contract that has so far been helping hundreds of thousands, in fact millions of thousands of people in the world have been the beneficiaries of this program. And since now this program has been terminated, it has left them shocked. They don't know what to do, and they're asking the world community, to at least convince, or in a way that this thing should have to be looked into for them to get what they have been getting. If the Trump administration continues to implement its executive orders of shutting down USAID funds, what actually do you think that those who were in need and the world community would feel?
First of all, the decision taken by Trump
Yes.
is actually disappointing other people in two forms. One is that it reduced American to be like looking at its own domestic issues than the world. Simply, it means America will never become the global leader. And if you are the global leader leading the world, then you should also participate in helping the other people, like the way American has been actually funding the major services in the whole world. That's one. So people are not happy with that decision. Second, is going to affect many Americans who are actually employed all over the world. It's a source of income. There are two things. The political side, social side, and economic side, based on individual. For example, according to the statistic, let's say 55% of the populations who are actually depending on US aid will be laid off. That means socially and economically these people will be affected.
Yes.
And it is also not only in Africa or at the rest of the world, also in the United States,
Yes.
those who work for US aid.
Yes.
So that is why you see most people are disappointed, because it's like taking away something that has been very helpful, and it is reducing your humanity and integrity into something smaller.
Let's bring this down, to Africa, and in fact to South Sudan, of which we are now live and talking in. For example, those that were being supported humanitarian, that were having humanitarian assistance from the U.S. government and the other side of health and even education. So with this kind of situation now, regardless how the country's situation is now going on, there are a lot more that are happening in the country. There seem to be security threats somewhere in the country, and with this recent terminations of this contract, for example, a lot more other people who have been suffering from HIV and AIDS. Now they have so far, there is an alarm of those NGOs or those organizations that were supplying them with medicines. So they have so far stopped providing these kind of people with the medicines that they were getting from such organizations. Now, what actually do you think that the government? Do you think the government of South Sudan will be capable of stepping in to provide these kind of medicines that people have been getting from the U.S. and from the other organizations that were supplying them or supporting them with the medical facilities?
First of all, when we have such kind of scenario where you are in shock, the first thing you do is for you to see and sit back and look at your own resources. such that you are going to improvise. Because if the government of South Sudan is not going to capitalize on the resources they have, it means there's going to be a mass suffering of many people, which nobody wishes to happen. And I think through the resources they have, I am quite sure they will try to manage and see how they will be able to look at the interests of what they have. The only issue we have is that the resources we are having, we only depend on non-oil, what we call and the oil revenue may not be enough to sustain every services to be delivered in the country. But I think what is happening is that the health of a human being is quite more important than any other things. Though the challenges we are having through our transition in terms of the governance is quite surrounding, that we are having a lot of issues that may not permit some of the things to go, especially those who are in the rural areas might be suffering a lot because of insufficient resources. And those are the people who are actually being on life aid through and life saving through USAID funding. And so for me, I would say, since we have been having this drastic withhold of funding by US, our government should look at the sources in order to improvise and be able to help those who are in need. Because I know any responsible government will never leave its citizen suffering, dying, if they have anything they can use to support their own citizen. Because there will be no any government if the citizens are not there. There will be no any leaders if the citizens are there. Leaders are there because the citizens are there. The subjects that they are ruling, the people who give them what we call a social contract, so that they will make decisions on their behalf. And providing services is a decision to be made by the government on how these people should be served.
Okay, many thanks indeed. Let's go for a short break, and we will be right back to continue with the program. Hello and welcome back from the break that we have so far taken. We have been talking about the recent decision that has been taken by the U.S. Government by terminating all the funds that were allocated to the USAID. The United States government, led by President Trump, terminate funds for the United States Agency for International Development, which is USAID, since early February 2025. USAID has been essentially disbanded, experiencing mass layoffs and forced closure of its headquarters in Washington, D.C. This follows President Donald Trump's executive orders, which halted all foreign assistance payment for 90 days, along with his administration narrative that the agency is plagued with a fraud and programs that undermine national interest. Although this idea has continued to spread, the reality is the USA is an important agency both domestically and internationally. As United States foreign assistance funding constitutes a significant percentage of worldwide health and safety of various countries and communities, but also possessed issues for American citizens and who worked alongside the assistance efforts. We have been talking on these programs. I've been joined in the studio by Dr. Miar Nyok de Mishar, who is a dynamic and innovative adjunct assistant professor at the University of Juba, specializing in business administration and management. In his research portfolios focuses on sustainable development services, innovations, and human resource and strategic human resource rather, management and political fragility in transitional governance, reflecting the commitment to advancing knowledge in this critical situation. Gentlemen, many thanks indeed, and welcome back to our discussion.
Yeah, thank you very much, Paul, for having me.
Yes, we are continuing with our discussion. This kind of a tough decision like we have been saying, it has shocked the whole world. The world community is surprised, by the way, by what has so far taken place. The initiative or the decision that was taken by the Trump's administration, of which several other world leaders are not happy with it, and they are trying by all means, to convince or to influence these kind of donors, the big donors in the world, to be providing all they have been doing. With this, the termination of the U.S. on foreign assistance have already begun to have negative global outcomes in regards to medical care on HIV and AIDS. What more can you say on this?
Okay, thank you very much. Most of, as we have actually discussed earlier, and we have now come back from our break. First of all, there is no way we will deny it, the reality that will kick in after the cut off of U.S. funding to various countries in Africa, including South Sudan. And health is an area where USAID has been actually very effective in supporting people who are living with HIV/AIDS, people who are actually suffering from acute diseases, tropical diseases, and many other areas of health need. And these people will actually be affected very much, and they will have to go through many consequences that could even go to death and any other thing that would happen. Nobody wished that it would have happened, but it caught us a surprise. And I would state again, when you give with your whole heart. And when somebody said, I'm not going to give you, there is no way you will condemn that person. Yes. It is better you hold back and ask yourself, what do I have in order to compensate the one that I have lost from the one who have been providing? And I think it's a learning lesson that most of the countries who have been receiving funding should not only rely on external funding or foreign aids. They should have all their own domestic ways of doing things in order to fund the services that are existing in their own country. For example, health is a basic services that in any institution or a government should look into. Education, all basic necessity should not go to a foreign funding in any stable institution or government.
Okay. For example, this kind of, this decision, of course, it has not only affected the beneficiaries of this program, but it has so far, it has also affected the NGOs. Some NGOs are going to face challenges and shutdown of their operations, and this will cause more layoffs of staff, which will increase more crimes from the young people in the world. What more do you have to say on that?
I think it's like when something comes in all of a sudden, it's like a shock, and people will have to look at a mechanism of coping. Some people can rely to what we call a self-employment, create small businesses. Some people can look elsewhere, because no more on what you can do than to have a hope, because I know the well will not close if USAID has closed. The well will still continue. And I do have a hope that if USAID has closed, the well has not closed, and people will still survive, and people will still go ahead with life as it is. Though there will be a lot of suffering, but I am sure as human, you will find a means of coping in order to provide a mean for living.
What you said is very, is in some words, it's very interesting. Like you're saying, the world has not closed, but the funds that were provided by the U.S. have been shut down. This thing although the world has not closed, there are some people in the world that have been the beneficiaries of their aids or their support, who will face it rough in the period of this that they have caused. That of course this process have been withheld. Now this extension of the assistance will also like to contribute to greater global inequality, where organizations that promote education will likely face large funding gap. What do you think the education sector will look like in the next few years or few months if this continues?
Well, what will happen if we give an example of education sector and the services? There will be a shrink. The system actually will reduce in a simple term. That means the number of manpowers and the enrollment in the school will go down. Because when you have a less manpower, it means many people will not be attended in normal circumstances. And so what needs to happen is that parents and the government need to look into the way of providing in order to continue supporting education. A child education is a necessity, especially primary school after secondary school. Let's say primary school is one of the basic needs that people need. I know in some countries primary school, like in Africa, is not a university, not free. But some countries, primary school after secondary schools are free, and they are being funded by the government. Areas where government still exists in supporting a school will still continue, and areas that relies on USAID will see into it whether to shift their services demand to the government assistance or any other institution that will come in to cover the gaps, though it may not be enough. Because a simple way, take an example of what happened with the coronavirus. The world was almost shut down. But here we still exist. Few of us were shocked, and they were actually they were killed by the virus, and people still exist. So the fact that US was controlling a bigger funding doesn't mean that people will flourish all of it. No, I don't believe in that. And I believe that humans look into different ways of transforming and transacting their daily and normal activities in order to survive. We will have what we call surviving moods until maybe US change its mind. But one thing that we need to know, there is no any country that is rich. All countries are the same. The only difference is in terms of governance. How do you manage your own resources that you have in your own countries? I believe US is not rich than South Sudan. Okay? And I believe US is not rich than any other country. But the difference is that some other countries like our country is going through what we call a political fragility and a transition that has not stabilized its own governance and good governance in order to be able to be stable and invest economically, socially, in order to produce something that is tangible. That is different. United States is already in that peak where it is performing and delivering, have a stable government and a stable governance. And so the resources they have a means of controlling it. And I don't believe United States is more richer than any other of the world.
Now, with what we said, for example, parents will have to look into this matter. Of course, that they should have, if these funds are being cut off, then the parents should have to look into other means of taking care of their children. Remember, some of these people are working for the government, and others are not even government employees, and they are not working anywhere. With these kind of people, what do you think? How do you think that these people will survive this kind of termination?
Okay. As I said before, if funding is not there, it doesn't mean the children have to stay at home like any other children. There has to be any other ways of looking into the ways and make sure that these children also continue with their education.
And if those ways are not there, what?
There is no any way that is not there.
Okay, now we are just left with only 1 minute for our discussion to come to a conclusion. And I would want you, if you were tasked with finding a solution to this crisis now, with the world community listening, what would you suggest the American people should do to the recent decision that has been taken by the president?
Okay, it's this way. There are two parts of it. The first thing, that countries that are depending on United States funding have to look into their domestic policies and their bilateral relationship with the United States. Why is it that Trump is cutting funding toward African countries? That's one. Second, the American people have also to look on how this decision is going to affect the global interests of America and their own. For example, let's look at our own countries. I do believe that, and I don't support aid, by the way. For me, I don't support aid because aid has made us to be depending on foreign aid, and we become slaves of aid. And that has caused insignificant laziness and abdications of responsibilities by individual and our governments in Africa at all. And for me, I think if it is not because of humanitarian ground, it is better for most of the countries in Africa to look into themselves. What is it that they can do in order to position themselves and be a sovereign state, like they call themselves? Look into ways of providing services that they have. And I am sure in any country we have the resources. Is that, like I said before, that most of African countries are going through what we call a transitional governance that has not been stabilized. They don't have good governance. That is the point that is affecting African countries and the rest of the world.
Many thanks indeed. We appreciate your time, gentlemen, for being with us. We appreciate that kind of time. With me and the whole team in the studio, thank you so much indeed for talking to us.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Doctor.
Yeah.